This has been weighing on me for a while, and I think it's finally time to get it off my chest. The situation with my family has always been frustrating, but I never expected it to end like this. Even now I'm still in shock. So sit back, because this is going to be one of those you won't believe it stories. First, a little about me. My name's Nathan, and I'm the older sibling. I've always been the responsible one, the one who picks up the slack, the one who's expected to handle things while my younger brother, Mason, gets away with everything. I'm 26 now, working a regular 9-to-5 job, trying to figure life out like everyone else. I don't mind responsibility. I was raised to believe that hard work pays off, even if it takes time. But Mason doesn't believe in hard work. If there's one thing my 22-year-old brother is good at, it's manipulating situations to his advantage. And somehow every single time our parents fall for it. Designer clothes, expensive gadgets, paid for trips. They hand him everything on a silver platter. Meanwhile, I was stuck doing the things no one wanted to do. Laundry, grocery shopping, running errands, making sure the house didn't fall apart while everyone else got to live their lives. Mom and Dad were strict with me. You have to earn your place. Life isn't easy, Nathan. You need to be responsible. That was their favorite line. They always claimed they were teaching me discipline, but when it came to Mason, discipline didn't apply to him. If something needed to get done, I was the one they called. If there was a tough decision to be made, I had to take the lead. But Mason? He was treated like royalty. He could do no wrong. And over the years, I learned to just accept it. I didn't get the praise. I didn't get the flashy rewards. But I got something they didn't. Independence. By 16, I had a job. I worked my way through school. I learned how to survive without anyone handing me things. But Mason? He never lifted a damn finger. And the worst part? He didn't even feel bad about it. Everything finally boiled over on Mason's graduation day. It was a huge deal for our parents. They treated it like he had just cured cancer, like it was some kind of world-changing achievement. Never mind the fact that he had barely passed. Never mind that he scraped by with the lowest grades possible. Never mind that he had put in zero effort. They were so proud. And me? Well, I was about to find out exactly where I stood. We had a small family gathering. Not anything extravagant, but you'd think the president was showing up with the way our parents acted. Balloons. Decorations. A massive cake with Mason's name written in gold lettering. They made it sound like the biggest event of the year. And for them, I guess it was. I don't want to sound bitter, but how could I not be? They were so focused on Mason, they didn't even acknowledge the things I had done. The nights I stayed up late making sure the bills were paid when Dad's job wasn't enough. The groceries I bought. The work I put in just to keep everything running smoothly. They never noticed. But I was about to get my moment, right? Surely after everything they'd recognize me too, right? Then came the presents. Mason, he got a brand new shiny car. A car our parents couldn't even afford. I later found out they had taken out a loan to cover the cost. And that part stung. Not because of the car itself, but because they were willing to go into debt for Mason, yet they had barely acknowledged any of my sacrifices. Then it was my turn. I tried to push the feelings aside. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who complains just because he doesn't get a flashy gift. But deep down I already knew. Something inside me was bracing for disappointment. Mom smiled at me, but it wasn't warm. It wasn't proud. It felt fake, like she was forcing it. Almost condescending. And then she handed me a small box. It felt light in my hands. I opened it slowly. And inside? Household cleaning supplies. Sponges. Dish soap. Paper towels. I stared. I couldn't breathe. For a second I thought it was a joke. That any moment they'd laugh and pull out something real. But no. That was the gift. I looked up at them, still processing, my mind blank with disbelief. And then Dad chuckled. "Well, Nathan," he said, slapping his knee, "now you can be even more useful around the house." Across the room Mason grinned. "Yeah, Nate. Now you can keep things nice and clean. You always do anyway." I don't even remember standing up. I just remember the sudden roar of blood in my ears, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I looked at the cleaning supplies in my hands, and then at the brand new car keys dangling from Mason's fingers. I felt everything hit me at once. The years of being the afterthought. The sacrifices that meant nothing. The fact that no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. I set the box down slowly, and then in the calmest voice I had ever used, I said, "I'm going out for a bit." I turned. I walked toward the door, feeling their confused stares boring into my back. "Nathan!" Mom called after me. I didn't stop. I stepped outside, shut the door behind me, and kept walking. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I wasn't coming back. Not this time. "Nathan." Mom's voice was soft, too soft. That forced sweetness she used whenever she was about to hand me some kind of lesson instead of something real. "We know you're so responsible, and we just wanted to make sure you have what you need for your future. We thought this would be practical." She placed a small box in my hands. I tried to smile, tried to act normal, but my gut was already twisting into knots. I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm, to keep my expectations low, but deep down, some part of me still held on to the stupid hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. I peeled back the wrapping, lifted the lid, and my stomach dropped. Inside was a stack of household cleaning supplies. Sponges, paper towels, dish soap, a bottle of disinfectant. I stared at it. My mind refused to process what I was seeing. I looked up, hoping, praying for some kind of punchline. But Dad just chuckled, slapping his knee like this was the funniest thing in the world. "Well, Nathan, now you can be even more useful around the house," he said, shaking his head like he was proud of himself. "You've always been so responsible. And this is just another way to show how much you contribute." Useful. That word hit me like a brick to the chest. Not deserving. Not appreciated. Not valued. Just useful. Across the room, Mason was grinning, his eyes glinting with that same smugness I had seen my entire life. "Yeah, Nate," he added, leaning back in his chair. "Now you can keep things nice and clean. You always do anyway." A brand new car for Mason. A box of sponges for me. I swallowed hard, but it felt like I was choking on something I couldn't name. My fingers tightened around the edge of the box. Was this a joke? No one was laughing. I felt something inside me crack, something deep, something important. I didn't even realize I had stood up until the room got quiet. I set the box down carefully, my hands trembling with rage, disbelief, exhaustion. Everything I had buried for years. "I'm going out for a bit," I said, my voice cold, steady. Mom frowned. "Nathan, honey." I didn't let her finish. I grabbed my jacket, turned on my heel, and walked out the door. I don't know how long I walked. I just kept moving, one foot in front of the other, through empty streets and cold night air, my mind racing with everything I had ignored for years. I should have been furious, and I was, but more than that, I was tired. Tired of being the responsible one. Tired of being the one they turned to when they needed something. Tired of being the backup plan, the afterthought, the one who had to earn every ounce of respect while Mason got handed the world. At some point, I found myself in a small park. There was an empty bench under a street lamp, and my legs gave out beneath me the second I reached it. I sat there, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of the years settle on my shoulders. I pulled out my phone. A couple of texts from friends. Nothing from my parents. Not even a "where are you?" or "are you okay?" Figures. I hesitated, then scrolled down to one name. Jason. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, man. You good?" I let out a breath, rubbing a hand down my face. "Not really. Can I crash at your place for a bit?" "Yeah, of course." What happened? By the time I got to Jason's apartment, it was past midnight. I told him everything. The party. The car. The sponges. He listened, his expression shifting from mild annoyance to genuine fury. "You don't deserve that, Nathan." His voice was sharp, like he was holding back from punching something. "You've been busting your ass for years, and they treat you like a damn maid? That's not okay, man." I let out a bitter laugh. I don't even know what to do anymore. I've given them everything, and Mason? He just takes. And they let him. They act like I should be grateful for it. Jason was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I hadn't really considered before. "Why don't you leave?" I blinked. "What? For real? Go get a job. Move out. Cut them off if you have to. You don't owe them anything, Nate. You've got this." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I sat there, gripping the edge of his couch, my mind racing. I didn't have to stay. I didn't have to keep being their safety net. I didn't have to keep sacrificing my life for a family that didn't appreciate me. It was a simple answer. A painfully obvious one. But for the first time in years, I actually let myself believe it. I didn't have to stay. I could leave. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I had to do. I barely slept that night. By the time the sun rose, I had a plan. I wasn't just going to take a break. I was going to walk away for good. I packed a bag, took a deep breath, and went back home one last time. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg for respect that should have been given freely. I was just going to leave. And this time, they weren't going to stop me. I wasn't just leaving the house that day. I was leaving everything. Not just the years of being the dependable one. Not just the weight of responsibility my parents had dumped on me. Not just the suffocating feeling of being used while Mason got to coast through life. I was walking away from the version of myself they had created, the one who existed to clean up their messes. I packed my bag, grabbing only what I needed, and went back home one last time. The house was quiet when I arrived. Mom and Dad weren't home, which only made it feel more final, like I was slipping out of a chapter in a book that could never be reopened. I started gathering my things, clothes, a few personal items, nothing sentimental. As I moved through the house, I noticed how little of it actually felt like mine. Not my room, not the furniture, not the air itself. By the time I heard their car pull into the driveway, my suitcase was already half full. My heart pounded as the front door creaked open. Nathan! Mom's voice rang down the hall, confusion laced in every syllable. I stepped into the living room, my bag in hand. I'm leaving, Mom. Her face fell. What? She blinked as if she'd misheard me. Where are you going? You can't just leave like this. I kept my tone even, but I could feel the pressure in my chest, the weight of years of being the forgotten son. I've been carrying this family for too long, I said, voice steady. It's time for me to go. You and Dad don't need me. You've always had Mason for everything else. Her mouth opened and closed, searching for the right argument. But she wasn't ready for this, wasn't ready for me to actually walk away. Nathan, you know we depend on you, she said, her voice growing sharper. You've been so helpful, and now this? This is the thanks we get. There it was. The guilt trip. The same one she'd used all my life. But this time, it wasn't going to work. I've been helpful because you've never given me a choice, I said, my voice colder than I expected. You expect me to clean up after everyone. Mason does whatever he wants and you keep rewarding him. Well, I'm done. Dad stepped into the room, his brow furrowed. What do you mean you're done? He crossed his arms, standing between me and the door. You're going to leave the family? After everything we've done for you? I exhaled slowly, looking him straight in the eye. You've done nothing for me, Dad. Silence. Mason gets a car, I continued, my grip tightening around the handle of my suitcase. And I get cleaning supplies. That's how much I mean to you. Mom's face twisted into something between shock and desperation. You don't understand, she insisted. We've been making sacrifices for your future. You're not seeing the bigger picture. I let out a bitter laugh. No, Mom. I'm done seeing the bigger picture. Because you've never actually seen me. I shook my head, feeling something break inside me. The last tether keeping me here. You've only ever seen what you could use me for. Then I turned to leave. But of course, Mason had to make his grand entrance. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a smug grin on his face. Wow, Nate. Leaving already? His voice dripped with mock sympathy. Guess you can't handle not being the favorite. I mean, I just got a brand new car, and what do you have? His smirk widened. A bag of sponges? Laughter bubbled in his throat. Something inside me snapped. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Shut up, Mason, I said, each word razor sharp. You don't have a clue. Mom shot him a glare, finally realizing his helpful commentary wasn't making things better. Then she turned back to me, her voice frantic now. Nathan, where are you even going to go? You can't just leave us like this. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked past her, past Mason, past Dad. I walked out the front door. And I didn't look back. As the cab pulled away from the curb, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. For the first time in years, I felt free. The next year was a blur of long nights, hard work, and finally putting myself first. I found a 9-to-5 job in sales, nothing special, just steady. But my real plan? That was the side hustle. I poured everything into it. Late nights, early mornings, endless trial and error. And after a few months, I started seeing real money. Not just scraps, real financial independence. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just getting by. I was building something of my own. And the better I did, the more my phone started to ring. It started small. A casual text from Mom. "Hey Nathan. How's the new place? Hope you're settling in well. Have you been able to keep busy with work?" I could see what she was doing. She was testing the waters, trying to reel me back in. I kept my response short, vague, detached. "I'm doing well. Work's keeping me busy." That was it. A few days later, another message. This time her tone shifted. "Nathan, your dad and I have been thinking. We're really proud of you. You've always worked hard, and we just wanted to tell you that we're here for you. No matter what." Ah, there it was. They weren't just checking in. They wanted something. I could feel it in every carefully chosen word. They were laying the groundwork, trying to make it seem like they'd always supported me. I wasn't buying it. So I responded with nothing more than, "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it." I could practically hear the frustration in her silence. Because this time, I wasn't falling for it. A week passed before the next message came. This time it wasn't from Mom. It was from Mason. "Hey Ollie, hope you're doing alright. I know things are a bit tense between us, but I just wanted to check in. How's work going? I've been thinking about you." I stared at my phone, eyebrows knitting together. Mason thinking about me? That was new. The same Mason who never cared about anything unless it benefited him? I wasn't about to fall for whatever game he was playing. Still, I didn't want to be petty. I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine, but I also wasn't going to give him the reaction he was expecting. I kept it short. "Everything's good. Work's going well and I'm staying busy. Nothing more, nothing less." 2 days later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom calling. I hesitated. I could ignore it. I probably should ignore it. But a small part of me, the part that still remembered what it was like to hope for something different, answered. "Hello. Nathan, honey, it's Mom," she said, her voice almost too soft, too sweet. "I hope you're doing well. Your dad and I were just talking. We were wondering if you could come by soon. We really miss you. You know, it's not the same without you here." My stomach dropped. This felt like a trap. They hadn't missed me before. Not like this. It had been months since I left, and suddenly they wanted to act like they cared? I could hear the desperation creeping into her voice. "I don't know, Mom," I said carefully. "I've got a lot going on. Things are different now." Silence. Then a slow inhale, the kind someone takes right before delivering bad news. "Well, it's just that, with everything that's been going on, we've been struggling a little," she said, her voice shifting into something carefully measured. "You know, with your brother's car payments and all. And the bills stacking up. It's been a lot for us lately. We could really use your help." There it was. I clenched my jaw. I knew it. They had been in debt. They had taken out loans to buy Mason that car, and now they were drowning. They hadn't thought about how they'd manage in the long run. And now they suddenly remembered I existed. But it wasn't because they missed me. It was because they needed something. I exhaled, my fingers tightening around the phone. "I don't know what you expect from me, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "I'm not coming back. I've built my life here." Her voice faltered, the smooth, practiced manipulation slipping for just a second. "We know you're doing well, Nathan. We just thought you could help us out a little. That's all. Just until we get back on our feet." I didn't respond right away. I was processing how easily they expected me to drop everything, to return home, to fix the mess they had made. "Listen, Mom," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not coming back. You and Dad made your choices. You decided to put everything into Mason. You can't just come to me when things get hard. You can't expect me to fix it." Silence. Then a quiet, broken whisper. "Nathan, please. We've made mistakes. But we're trying. We really need you." Something twisted in my chest. Was it anger? Sympathy? Resentment? A mix of everything. I had worked so hard to get away from them, to escape the pattern of being the one they relied on while Mason got whatever he wanted. And now here they were trying to pull me back in. I can't help you, I said, my decision solidifying. I've worked too hard for this. I'm not going to put myself back in that situation. That was the first call. It wasn't the last. Over the next few weeks, the calls became more frequent. Each time they sounded more desperate. Mom would remind me how much they needed me. Dad would talk about everything they had sacrificed for me. They even used Mason, talking about how his grades were slipping, how he wasn't handling the pressure of adult life well, how he needed guidance from his older brother. They tried everything. But every time I refused, they pushed harder. Until the calls stopped altogether. And the silence was almost worse. Because I knew what it meant. They were angry, disappointed, maybe even resentful. But it didn't stop me from living my life. Then, one day I got a text. From Mason. This time, it wasn't casual. It wasn't him checking in or pretending to care. It was a cry for help. Nathan, I need you to help me. Things are getting out of hand. Dad's been really upset lately, and Mom, she doesn't know what to do. We're in serious trouble. I stared at my phone. The words blurred together as my brain tried to process them. For the first time, Mason sounded genuinely afraid. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't being smug. He wasn't making fun of me. I could feel the urgency in his words. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure if I even should. What did he want from me? Was this another trap? Finally, after a few minutes, I typed out a short, deliberate reply. What do you want from me, Mason? The response came instantly. I'm serious, Ollie. We're in debt. We can't handle the car payments. I don't know who else to turn to. A slow, cold realization settled over me. This wasn't just about them needing money. This was about a family falling apart. And Mason, who had been handed everything on a silver platter, was finally realizing just how bad things had gotten. I sat there staring at his message, my fingers twitching with frustration. Then I started typing. And this time, I didn't hold back. Mason, you don't get it, do you? I hesitated, then finished the message. This isn't my problem. The words were harsh, but they needed to be said. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just about a car payment. This was about principles. For years, they had put me in a position where I was the one who had to sacrifice everything. I wasn't going to let them do it again. I stared at the message on my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. You and Dad put yourselves in this mess. I told you when I left I was done. I'm not coming back to fix things for you. Don't ask me to. I hit send. And for the first time in my life I felt free. The weight I had been carrying, the years of responsibility, of being the reliable one, the afterthought, the backup plan lifted. But just as I exhaled, my phone rang. Mom. I clenched my jaw. I didn't want to answer. I knew exactly how this conversation would go. But if I ignored her now, she'd just keep calling. I let out a slow breath and pressed accept. Hello. Nathan. Her voice was already trembling. Please listen. I don't know what to do. You need to come back. Your dad, he's not handling things well. He's been so upset, Ollie. And Mason, her voice cracked. He's struggling. His grades are slipping. He's overwhelmed. He doesn't know how to manage everything. It's getting worse. I felt my patience snap. Mom, I don't care. Silence. A long, heavy silence. I have my own life now, I continued, my voice firm. I told you I wasn't coming back. You chose to spoil Mason and ignore me for years. Now, when things are falling apart, you expect me to drop everything and fix it. No. She let out a shaky breath. I could hear the hurt in it, but I wasn't about to apologize. Not this time. Nathan, we're not asking you to fix everything, she pleaded. We just thought maybe you could help us. Just a little. It's been so hard, and we don't know who else to turn to. I clenched my fists. You thought you could ignore me when I needed help. But now that you're struggling, you think I owe you. I let out a bitter laugh. What happened to your perfect family, Mom? The one where Mason could do no wrong, and I was just convenient. Her voice cracked. It's not like that, Ollie. We've made mistakes, but we're trying to do better now. Please just come home. Home. The word made my stomach turn. I'm not coming back, I said coldly. And I'm certainly not going to keep bailing you out. You can't just call me when it's convenient for you. You made your choices. Nathan, please, she started again, her voice breaking. But I wasn't falling for it. No, I cut in. I've heard this before. I'm not your solution. You want to fix things? Start with Mason. He's the one with the brand new car. The one who's never worked a day in his life. You want to know what being an adult looks like? Stop using me as your crutch and figure it out yourselves. She sobbed. I could hear it through the phone, the raw desperation in her voice. You don't understand, Ollie. You don't understand how hard it's been. Please. I felt something in my chest. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was sadness. Maybe it was just the final crushing realization that there was no fixing this. I swallowed hard. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice turning to steel. But I'm not going to give in. You need to face the consequences of your choices. Then before she could say another word, I hung up. And for the first time in my life I didn't feel guilty about it. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer frustration that had been building for months. They had always seen me as someone they could manipulate. Someone who could be pushed into action whenever they needed something. But not anymore. I knew this wasn't the end of it. I knew they'd try again. Mom had always been persistent when she wanted something, and Dad? He was the master of guilt trips. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had worked too hard. I had sacrificed too much. And I wasn't going to let them drag me back. A week passed. Then as I was getting ready to leave work, my phone buzzed. A notification from Dad. I frowned. It wasn't a call. It wasn't an urgent, frantic text. It was something else. I opened the message. We've been talking and we've made some changes. We're sorry for how things have been. Your mom and I, we just want to help you. We miss you and we need you. Please, Nathan, come home. Let's fix things. We'll work together. My heart hammered in my chest. I wasn't sure what to feel. A part of me wanted to be angry. A part of me wondered if they really meant it. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat there in my apartment, staring at the words on the screen. We miss you. We need you. Where was that love when I was breaking my back for them? Where was that concern when Mason was getting everything handed to him, and I was just supposed to be grateful for scraps? Where was this family unity when I was packing my bags, walking out that door, and they didn't even try to stop me? Now, after everything, they were suddenly begging for my help? I wasn't buying it. Days passed. I didn't answer. And for the first time in my life, they didn't push. No follow-up calls. No texts. Just silence. Maybe they were waiting for me to cave. Maybe they thought I'd come running back. But I wasn't that person anymore. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. For a while I thought maybe they had finally given up. Maybe they realized they couldn't rely on me anymore. Maybe they'd learned their lesson. Maybe, just maybe, they had figured out that I wasn't their last resort, their emotional bank account, their built-in problem solver. But then another message came. Not from Mom. Not from Dad. From Mason. You're really gonna leave us hanging like this? What's the point of family if you don't help when we need it? You're being selfish. We're struggling, and you're just going to let us drown? I thought you were better than this. There it was. The same old tactics. The guilt. The manipulation. The entitlement. I wasn't surprised. Mason had always played the victim when things didn't go his way. He was the golden child, the one who never had to struggle, never had to work for anything. And now that things weren't perfect, now that life wasn't handing him everything on a silver platter, he needed someone to blame. I stared at my phone, anger simmering beneath the surface. This time I wasn't going to let it work. I sat down, typing slowly, deliberately, making sure every word hit exactly where it needed to. You don't get it, Mason. I'm not your backup. I'm not your safety net. And I'm sure as hell not your savior. You've always had everything handed to you, and now that life is finally demanding something back, you want me to come running and fix it? That's not how this works. You're grown just like I am. It's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Don't ever contact me again unless you're ready to be honest about what you've done. I hit send. My finger trembled slightly, but not from hesitation. From finality. For the first time in my life, I felt sure of my decision. But that wasn't the end of it. A few weeks later, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text. It was a call. From an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something in me said I needed to answer. So I did. Hello. For a second there was silence. Then, Nathan. Dad. I could tell immediately he sounded different. The usual sternness in his voice was gone. The arrogance, the pride, the expectation. All of it had crumbled into something I had never heard from him before. Something that almost sounded like defeat. We know we messed up, he said, his voice rough. Tired. Your mom and we've been trying to fix things. And we're sorry. We were wrong. I didn't say anything. We don't want you to think we only care about what you can do for us. He continued, the words slow, deliberate, like they were difficult to admit. We want our family back. We want you back. I closed my eyes. The words hit me harder than I expected. A part of me wanted to believe him. A part of me wanted to hope that maybe, just maybe, they meant it this time. But another part of me, the rational, logical, painfully honest part, remembered everything. The years of being ignored. The years of being used. The years of being pushed aside, only to be remembered when I was needed. And now suddenly when things had fallen apart they wanted me back? No. I'm not coming back, Dad. Silence. Not now. Not ever. I could hear his breathing on the other end of the line. Heavy. Labored. You can't just expect me to forget. Everything. I continued, my voice steady. You made your choices. I'm making mine. Another long pause. Then finally, I understand. His voice sounded defeated. But please just know we're here if you ever change your mind. I didn't say another word. I just hung up. And then I sat there, staring at the phone in my hands, letting the weight of what had just happened settle in. I felt relief. Not sadness. Not anger. Relief. For the first time in my life I was truly free. A lot has changed since that call. My parents tried to reach out a few more times, but I stayed firm. I refused to let them back in. And you know what? I don't regret it. In the past year I've built something for myself. A life where I don't have to rely on anyone. A life where I'm in control. My income is growing steadily. In a few more months I'll be at a point where I can truly call myself financially independent. And deep down I know exactly what will happen when my parents find out. They'll come knocking again. They'll test the waters, see if I've softened, if they can convince me to take responsibility for them once more. But this time, I won't be there. Am I wrong for refusing to help them? A part of me knows I did the right thing, but there's always that nagging guilt in the back of my mind. They're family. But after everything they put me through, I just don't know if I can forgive them. Let me know what you think.